This podcast brought to you by Digital Diamond Entertainment.
Over the past 2 years, looted stores, burning cars, and racial tensions have been splashed across television screens as symbols of African-American frustration with the power structure.
They make a lot of promises and everything, and then once they get in office, you can go to hell.
The black vote has manifested as anti-Trump. He polls in the single digits, and that's an improvement. But it has never been pro-Clinton, particularly after a three-word misstep in the primary.
All lives matter.
WikiLeaks showed in an effort to win black votes, Clinton's campaign mulled using the phrase "yo mama" in a speech. As tension between African Americans and police spiked, the effort to win blacks was complicated by the tragedy in Dallas. Clinton could not offend those who were horrified by the slaughter of police officers.
We must not vilify police officers. Remember what those officers were doing when they died. They were protecting a peaceful march.
In Florida, with a prize of 29 electoral votes, the Clinton campaign is said to be in a panic over black voter apathy. So Hillary hit the Sunshine State hard, sent husband Bill on tour there, enlisted the help of the president.
I will consider it a personal insult, an insult to my legacy, if this community lets down its guard and fails to activate itself in this election.
She gets help from black leaders at her rallies, but she's not reaching the individuals.
Black people are tired of coming to the rescue, if you will, of the Democratic Party in election after election and then not getting anything in return.
Donald Trump has jumped on that sentiment, focusing on poverty and violence. Chicago surpassing 600 murders this year, mostly in minority neighborhoods.
Our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell.
He says blacks have supported Democrats for decades and been exploited for their vote.
Look how much African American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following: what do you have to lose?
All right, Vex, run the intro.
So when am I getting paid for this?
Kind of like a podcast, sort of, but not really. We're podcast-ish.
What's this ish? What do you mean ish?
Some material may be inappropriate for children under 13.
Hey, welcome back to the Podcast-ish podcast, where every week we give you the facts, fiction, and twisted opinions on aspects of human behavior. We believe words are important and the facts don't give a fuck about your opinion. Feelings.
Sure, either or.
So sit back and strap in, because this week the set goes in on interracial race relations.
Right.
I know.
Well, I think
convoluted. I'm your host, Pernell Ramlo. This is John Vex alongside Will Hayes.
Most of my kids are products of interracial race relations.
We are all products of interracial race relations, except for Big Lev here.
And speaking of interracial race relations, today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Lex. For all your Stay Fresh needs, Lex has you covered. If you're looking for Bape Supreme, the exclusive 26th Dover collection, and those hard-to-find Jordans or Yeezys, you need to check out Lex. That's Lex on 17th Avenue Southeast and Chinook Mall across from Urban Outfitters. Don't sleep.
Yeah. As you guys heard in the intro, we're going into race relations. That clip you heard was from the November 2nd, 2016, I think, from the presidential election, 2016 presidential election, where they were going in on what should be happening for the candidates. Now, we all know by this time that Trump won. If you don't know that, then
now you know.
Now, no, Negro.
Damn, I was trying to beat Will into saying the N-word.
It's not happening, man. That's entrapment. That doesn't count if you bait me into it. That's entrapment.
To be fair, he almost made it 2 full episodes without saying it, and he only came like 14 minutes short of the last one. So we'll try and give him some leeway here. Hopefully he doesn't go back into it. Where do you guys want to start? Listen, this one I didn't do any kind of Googling for it. I'm just going to go off the top of the head and maybe do some research on the fly. I think we can all riff on this because we are all part of race relations and interracial race relations.
Well, yes. Will, myself, and Parnell are definitely the products of interracial relationships.
And I love it.
Many. Parnell and Will's children are definitely the results of interracial relationships.
Love it.
The island that I am from and the country that Parnell's father is from, most people are the result of interracial relationships.
They love it.
But what I think we should do first and foremost is define what interracial means and what it doesn't mean. So, for example, when someone says XYZ person is racist because he hates Muslims, Muslim is not a race. Muslim is a religion, ergo a mindset. When someone says XYZ person is racist because he hates Mexicans, Mexican is not a race. It is a nationality. There's one problem I've always had since moving to Canada when people try to define your race. You'll say, yeah, I know so-and-so person. They're half Jamaican, half Portuguese. Well, Jamaican is not a race, and Portuguese is not a race. So let's be very clear on what race actually is. There's a big difference between race and nationality. Mm-hmm. I've always been fond of defining race by race.
And nationality
Strictly.
by nationality.
And nationality by nationality, right? So,
but that is tough. It's tough because
people are uneducated.
People are uneducated. Some people, a lot of it is stereotypes. Some people think Africa's a country. I mean, it's a whole, like, what's your race? African? Like,
yeah.
Right.
Like,
it's a little
right.
Yeah.
And then that now brings up the whole, well, you can't call someone black anymore because that's insensitive. No, well,
I think they nipped that in the bud in the 90s. Like, I think that's where when they started saying African American, and I think like mid to late 90s, black people were like, you know what? Stop. Like, just, we're black.
Exactly.
Nobody likes the African American. They started calling themselves New Africans and stuff like that. Because I think that was the one where black people were like, okay, like, y'all are just doing too much now, white people.
But then,
black.
But then
like,
white people weren't like, well, excuse me, I'm Caucasian Canadian.
Right.
And it's just like, no, I'm white.
You ever been, right? I've been called African American. I had to look at these people, and I'd be like, yo, dog, I'm neither.
Yeah. I was neither born in Africa nor am I
America.
American.
Well, North American. I'm like, no, fam, you need to quit like sucking on the United States teat here. Okay,
yeah.
I'm black, and I'm Canadian. If you want to define me as something, my name is Will.
You like mocha?
I'm mocha.
You like mocha?
Like mocha only?
No, you're darker than mocha only.
Yeah, mocha only is a cool dude though.
Yeah, he's all right.
Right, but so that's where it comes down to. And then the other thing I would love to nip in the bud here, the North American definition of black. I highly disagree with the North American definition.
The one-drop rule?
The one-drop rule, which was decided on by the Democratic Party back in the day and was deemed too extreme a marker or a rule to determine one's race by the Nazis, is still used today. I remember years and years ago when I'd first come to Canada, watching an episode of Oprah and seeing a man that anywhere else in the world would be defined as Caucasian, on the episode going, I never knew I was black. And I'm sitting there going, what do you mean you never knew you were black? You are not black. And Oprah going, well, how did you know? When did you find out and how do you know you're black? And he's like, well, my great-great-great-grandfather was black, so that makes me black. So in my mind, what that really says is there's the mentality that white blood is so weak that one drop makes you black.
Well, it is. Let me get through a couple things here real quick. I'll actually define everything: ethnicity, nationality, race. We'll get through that real quick. So let me just run through this.
As defined by who?
As defined by diffin.com. They have ethnicity versus race to different definition, different genealogy.
Defined by what.com?
DIFFEN, diffin.com. It says ethnicity versus race. A traditional definition of race and ethnicity is related to biological and sociological factors, respectively. Race refers to a person's physical characteristics such as bone structure, skin, hair, or eye color. Ethnicity refers to cultural factors, including nationality, regional culture, ancestry, and language. An example of race is brown, white, or black skin, all from various parts of the world. While an example of ethnicity is German or Spanish ancestry, regardless of race, or like Han Chinese. Your race is determined by how you look, while your ethnicity is determined based on your social and cultural groups you belong to. You can have more than one ethnicities, but you are said to have one race, even if it's mixed race.
Wow.
The comparison chart.
You care? I disagree with some of the things
what do you
they've said
disagree?
already. You can have more than one Quit scrolling. Go back up. You can have more than one ethnicities, which is actually what they say.
Yeah,
therefore,
I know it's straight.
Therefore, I'm not sure how valid this site is if they can't English properly.
I don't disagree.
Right. I think what I really wanted to get into on this kind of topic is the sociology of race and ethnic relations.
Okay.
What it means to be part of a culture that is against another culture or against another race.
Okay.
And why we feel we need to have this groupthink and this group mentality. That's kind of where I wanted to go with this, because I think that this leads to a lot of the issues and a lot of the unsolved problems we have in society today. Does that make sense?
Well, at the very core, humans are a tribal creature at its very core, right? Which is why back in the day, everyone formed a little tribe based on the similar interests or similar goals. You see that in every primitive tribe. Or in every primitive society, sorry, not in every primitive tribe.
The societies would be primitive if they were tribes. John.
Not necessarily, but...
Okay.
Societies would be primitive if they were tribes? See, that's a
slippery slope.
That's a powder cake. That's a powder cake, but that's a very good thing. That's a lot of you can use that as a segue as to why people do this, because there's a lot of different stereotypes that people just feel and they come out. Like, do you think when you hear tribe, you think of subhuman, you think of running around with loincloths and spears and da-da-da, when that's not really...
exactly.
The topless, yeah. Long
right, but
titty, no nipple having.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
I when I said that.
Yeah, but the sociology behind it, I think, is very simple. That humans are tribal by nature. And what tends to happen is when you have two different tribes, which are usually less defined by race and more defined by mindset and goal, when you have two of them neighboring each other, problems arise.
Right.
Okay. What we're seeing right now, like in Europe, for example, with the massive influx of Muslims from the Middle East and Africans from Africa, is you're finding the societies not only segregating themselves, but now these segregated neighborhoods becoming ghettoized.
Okay.
Right? So, and I can speak for myself. When I came to Canada, I gravitated mainly towards people who were Caribbean. Not because I'm racist, but because I felt more comfortable with Caribbean people. So, and it tends to happen everywhere. Right? And then by extension now, because in Trinidad I was so used to dealing with, shall we say, quote-unquote, people of color, more often than Caucasians, a lot of my social group is filled with people of color.
Right.
Right? And I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with, at least in my case, similarities of experience necessarily or exclusively, because a lot of us have had very different experiences. Yourself and Will included have had very different experiences in life than I have. But at the same time, I think it also it basically came down for me to being comfortable around people, right? And it's not to say I can't relate to a Caucasian, right?
Okay. Well, let's get into the sociology of race and ethnic relations. This is off Wikipedia. I'm going to read the first two paragraphs here, and we can kind of riff off that. The sociology of race and ethnic relations is the study of social, political, and economic relations between races and ethnicities at all levels of society. This area encompasses the study of systemic racism, like residential segregation and other complex social processes between different racial and ethnic groups. The sociological analysis of race and ethnicity frequently...
Ethnicity.
I can't fucking speak today. Interacts with other areas of sociology, such as, but not limited to, stratification and social psychology, as well as postcolonial theory. At the levels of political policy, ethnic relations is discussed in terms of either assimilation or multiculturalism. Anti-racism forms other style of policy. Particularly popular in the 1960s and 70s. At the level of academic inquiry, ethnic relations is discussed either by the experiences or individual racial ethnic groups, or else by overachieving theoretical issues. overarching theoretical issues. I can't fucking read big words. This one we should have postponed till next week because I think after we just did one that was so in depth, this one might be a little challenge for us. But let's try and get through this.
So what are we really talking about? We just discussing how people of different cultures and races intermingle? Or are we talking about why people are racist or why people are inherent against other? Exactly. We're talking about why people want to group themselves. I mean,
yes,
group. Okay, but grouping yourself doesn't like just because you're more comfortable with one doesn't mean you don't like the other. So what do we?
Agreed.
So no, we need that, and that's I think. I really think like we're trying to hit a target with a shotgun.
No. Well, say what we're trying to get to is why we assimilate with each other,
survival,
right? Mm-hmm. And then why? Okay, and then why we also have this need to side with somebody of our same race or culture against another culture.
Okay, well, you know what? Let me get the ball rolling here on something very controversial. The clip you played early in the episode before we began talking was about the 2016 elections, right? Will said something very interesting, that just because we have a group preference doesn't mean we dislike another group. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, and this is by, like, I do not identify as any race in particular. Okay, because I am actually really and truly no race in particular. Okay, I have African ancestry. Well, let's say I have black ancestry, I have white ancestry, I have Oriental ancestry, and I have East Indian ancestry, right? As well as a little bit of native Caribbean ancestry. Okay, and you'll find most people in Trinidad are not one specific race. They don't belong to one specific race group. My experiences are very unique because of the fact that Trinidad, assimilation was really and truly forced upon every group that went there because there was no other way to survive.
Okay.
Right? So, and you see the same in Guyana as well, where you have a lot of Indo-Guyanese and African Guyanese. But they had to get together. And then, of course, you have a lot of European Guyanese as well. Right? So you'll see someone who is very dark-skinned, but they have a Portuguese last name in Guyana. Right? Or you'll see someone in Trinidad who looks absolutely black, but their great-grandfather was Chinese. Right? Race mixing and race relations in Trinidad historically hasn't been anything. Like, it was not something that we thought about, at least when I was growing up, and even in my parents' day, when they were growing up, it wasn't anything that anybody really thought about. Unfortunately, because of contamination by the U.S., race relations between people of African descent in Trinidad and people of East Indian descent in Trinidad has become very, very strained. Not only that, it's also because of politics going on down in Trinidad, which really saddens me. But that's off topic. What I really wanted to address was Donald Trump, actually, right? And why people think he's racist and why I don't think he's racist.
It's all yours.
Right? Okay.
Floor is all yours. I was going to go into something. But go ahead. I want to hear this.
Yeah, no, simply because
I want to hear this.
Of course you want to hear this. So,
no, it's not that I disagree or agree or disagree. I just want to hear it.
Yeah. And so people would say he's racist because he put a ban on Muslims. At least that's the talking point, which is completely untrue. He put a travel ban on, 8 countries? And it's not because of the religion, it's because of the mindset. Right? And as a matter of fact, it was the same ban that Barack Obama had put on in his presidency. So, strike down 1. Number 2, he doesn't like black people. Well, for a man who doesn't like black people, it's very strange that he dated a black model for 2 years in the 90s.
I know a lot of people that are racist as hell, and they
Can you speak into the mic?
Women. I know a lot of people that are racist as hell, but love black women.
Absolutely, but that's not an argument.
No, it's not an argument. I'm just saying it is an argument if that's your. I can find it hard to believe that he's racist and da. That's not an exemption.
I don't know, man.
It's not an exemption.
You'll have to.
You can hate black people but love fucking them. It's not an exemption. First one maybe. I mean, the first one is a wonderful example.
How can you hate somebody and still love to fuck? I'm not catching that.
Dominance, power, preference. I don't know. Same reason why people are homophobic but still go out and pay for gay prostitutes.
Yeah, I think you're talking some very fringe elements here.
fringe element is still an element.
No, absolutely. But again, you're using now one of the things that I always harp against, using the exception of the rule to say, well, okay, cool, this applies to everyone.
No, I'm not.
Right? That's the exception to the rule that proves the rule, dude.
There's an exception to the rule when you're using that. I don't know how he can be racist.
I can only talk on the evidence, right? I can only talk on the evidence. And the evidence presented is he's dated a black model.
Which doesn't
for
mean
2 years.
Right. And that doesn't mean that's not dating a black person or a person on the other side of the race is really not a strong argument against being a racist.
But it's definitely a stronger argument
I'm not saying that
he is racist.
I'm not saying that he is a racist or anything like that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't care about the Donald Trump thing. Like if he's racist, this, that, and the third, he's part of the government, so he's part of the problem. So
it's true. I'm not disagreeing with
that.
He's
part of the problem.
Instead of arguing,
it's not an argument. I'm just devil advocating that specific point.
But to me, that's one of the problems of the argument, right? Is that you will bring up a fact and someone will go, well, I know someone who's racist, but they go out with a black. No, I don't give a damn. Right? That's not part of the. There's no evidence. You're not presenting any evidence. I am presenting evidence.
Okay, so
and what you're doing is going. Well, I know someone who does the opposite. I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. That doesn't apply. Like that, it's like going into court and saying, well, I saw so-and-so shoot somebody. Well, I saw another white guy not shoot somebody. Who cares?
That's not even the same. You're just telling me that...
Absolutely. I just gave you evidence and you're saying I know someone who doesn't do that.
You gave me evidence by telling me that you know that he did da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, Cara Young.
Okay, and you want me to grab the person who was racist and grab the person they dated? Is that the evidence you want?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, I want you to show Donald Trump being racist.
Okay. Is my argument that Donald Trump is racist?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where we have the failure to communicate. Okay, keep going. It's not my argument. That's not my argument.
Well, why did you... anyway, whatever. Mexican ban. Right? As we've established already, Mexican is not a race. Right? There are Caucasian Mexicans, there are African Mexicans, there are Indo-American Mexicans, right? So by saying, listen, there is a country that borders us that tends to send people through the wrong channels to our country, and we want to stop that. That's not being racist.
No, I think that's being a nationalist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's being wanting to protect your country.
Right? So to bring it back around to what Will had said earlier, you don't have to be part of someone's group in order to not hate them.
Okay.
Right?
What I was going to get at is that you were saying in Trinidad, you never really noticed race. You didn't have any there wasn't any racism per se.
Yeah.
Right. Because everybody had to get along to survive, right?
Yeah.
I know growing up, and Will, maybe you can back me on this, that my parents, my mother being white, my father being black, well, we call him a Dogla, which is half East Indian, half black. It was tumultuous growing up, simply because in those days, in the early '80s, mid '80s, you weren't really used to seeing that type of thing. Especially where I grew up, it was mostly white people. I grew up in the country, so it was mostly all white people, rednecks, and I use rednecks in a loving term. I love rednecks. I really do. They're awesome. It's you didn't see. For instance, in the town we grew up, my dad was the only colored person there. That being said, my sister and I were the only colored kids at the school, right? And being the only colored kids, you're not only not white, even though I'm half white. I was not only not white to these kids, I was also not black, and I didn't fit in any circle. Right. So having friends in Calgary, my parents having friends in Calgary, might have black friends, this and that, right? I would go to black families' houses, and I wasn't accepted being black.
Right.
Going to white people's houses, I wasn't considered white.
Right.
I was my own individual, but I had no place to fit in. That is, for the lack of a better term, detrimental. It was detrimental to me. Right. Because I didn't know who I was, what I was, where I fit in, and why I fit in, if I ever would. I don't. Now I think of it as it was probably the best way for me to grow up, because not only did I experience both sides of the culture, white and black, from both parents, I was also able to make the decisions myself on how to think and which way to kind of go, as opposed to, seeing the facts and analyzing things myself to decide which way or which side of the fence I should be on for any kind of topic, right? I think that's why when people look at me, they're automatically going to think, oh, I'm a liberal. I think a certain way. I mean, I'm sure people look at you the same way, kind of, right?
Yeah.
You have these certain mindsets because you're a certain color, and this is how you should think.
Absolutely.
Right? Whereas I look at things and I try to lay out the facts, and I try to go through the science or go through whatever it is and make my own decision on it, as opposed to following a groupthink process.
Yeah, and it's very easy to fall into that groupthink process if you're part of a certain group, right? And I find it so strange. The first time somebody called me the N-word up here, it shocked me because I was like, that's not what. I'm not that.
Yeah, you look more. I'd be like, you fucking chink. That's what I would call you.
Yeah, that's racist.
Shut up. Shut up, Chinese. And there's another thing. When you and I talk on the phone, I'm like, you're like coolie. I'm like Chinese.
Yeah.
Like, we call each other. These are terms of endearment for us.
Which is like a very Caribbean thing to do.
Right.
No, it stuns me. I look at, and all of this has come to light, or even more into focus, after Donald Trump got elected, right? Everybody's talking about race relations, etc., etc. And as much as I hate to say this type of thing, I think that conversation needs to be had.
Right.
But to me, the conclusion already is that there isn't much difference between races, at least in a mindset way, right? If you take individuals from any place, their mindset is probably going to be very similar. The problem arises is when you get into a groupthink mentality, which tends to turn into a mob mentality.
Right, and it also turns into, again, a black versus white, or a brown versus black, or
versus.
It's a versus, a conflict of interests, I guess, or a conflict of ideologies,
yes,
or a conflict of backgrounds.
Yeah,
that it goes back to understanding a different race or a different culture, and understanding why people use some words instead of different words, right? Yeah, and it all falls into this whole outrage culture I think we have now in society, where we have people being offended for the littlest things because they're not trying to understand what the other person is trying to say. They're just thinking, how does this affect me?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem. I think the other part of the problem is, and this is probably going to get some heat. Part of the problem also is the belief that, well, number one, that race determines culture. And then number two, that cultures are all equal.
Okay.
Right? So obviously, yeah, you can look at let's say someone from sub-Saharan Africa and then someone from Russia.
Right.
Compare them, and their cultures are going to be different. Their racial makeup is going to be different. So it's very easy to say, well, race determines culture, right? And therefore you're part of a certain race, so you have to be part of a certain culture, right? When I was DJing regularly, it was, yeah, you're Caribbean, so would you like to go and smoke some weed? No, I don't touch this stuff. Right.
Right.
That's one of the misconceptions of everyone from the Caribbean.
Stereotyping,
right?
kind of, yeah.
Right. Everybody smokes weed. Hey, mon, Rasta mon. Listen, I never said mon in my life. Right? So
it's always the white people you work with that do that shit.
Yeah. Amen.
It's always the white people that you work with that try to fucking hood it up. It's like
trying to hood it up.
Like, yo, what's up? Yo, what's up, fam? Da da da. Just chilling, like, dog. It's like, my name is Will.
Yes.
Greet me. Hi, Will. How was your day?
Absolutely. And you grew up in Sundance,
right?
So why are you talking like that?
Don't talk to Becky one way and then walk down the fucking hallway and be like, yo, what up, bro? How you doing, man?
Yeah.
Like,
it's patronizing.
I hate it.
It's absolutely patronizing.
Well, it's patronizing, and it's also the fact that people kind of want to fit into whoever they're talking with, right?
Yeah,
like,
but it's fake, right? Like,
it is fake.
Just
it is
be
fake.
Especially if you've never seen me talk like that.
This is like that all the time.
No. This is beyond. Even in the office, like when I talk, how I'm talking like right now.
Yeah.
It's how I talk regularly in the office.
Yes.
Except like I'm in an office, so I'm not using cuss words. I'm not using too much slang, but I still talk comfortably.
Right. Do you still say the N-word?
No, not in the office. No, that's in HR. That's in HR. I'll get in more trouble. I'll get in more trouble than anybody else. That's an HR incident. White people will be on my behind for that shit. Will,
black guy said
the black
the
side
N-word.
said the N-word, and it really made me uncomfortable because
I can't say
I
it.
dated a black man once, and I just don't think that language is appropriate for yo. Shout out to Levs, but the only white guy in the room, and we're just making fun of white people. But
I didn't even think of it. He's so black.
Yeah, Levs is so Levs is so just like
Levs is
he's
Levs.
like water.
Just chill, yeah.
He's just so water. Like, what's your race? Water. Water. But yeah, so
Are you saying
that
he's so white he's see-through?
He's clear, transparent.
Yeah, so it's one of those. It's one of those things where you know what, Levs is a wonderful example of someone that is comfortable around different races,
And you don't consider
and has
his
good.
race.
You don't consider his race, and his race relations is good. He's not trying to be so unracist that he's coming off as racist. Like when you're blacking up the conversation, or you're changing it, or you talk to your Indian friend and all you bring up is like curry and
turbans and
stuff like that. It's like, yo, I love roti, fam. And your Indian news like, I don't even like Indian food. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and he's speaking with a pure Canadian accent.
Yeah. So and to take from what the whole thing that's going on with Trump in the States, the whole thing that you're talking about with race relations has either there's no medium. Like, there's no Levs now. There's no medium like Levs.
Yeah, it's
there's
either
no
black
like,
or
I'm
white,
just gonna be myself and da-da-da. Now it's like either extremely against something or so fucking far for it, you're really patronizing and making the people that you're for uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and that's where it gets to, and that's where it gets to the whole extreme left, extreme right sides, right? I mean, all four of us in this room will probably fall in the middle of most of the conversations being had.
Yeah.
Right?
I just look at things. I look at things as objectively as possible.
Well, I think that's the good way to look at it, right? And that's the best way to look at it.
I will admit that.
Absolutely, I think everybody does, and that's just is how you're raised, and your morals and whatever you come up with, right? And that's one of the things that needs to be included in there is the culture and the I guess the identity you have within that culture coming up will influence how you think about a particular topic. Right. That being said, there's somebody that would grow up on the complete opposite side that if you don't get into deep conversations with, you'll never know their opposing viewpoints if they have them.
Absolutely.
Right.
I agree with that.
That's one of those you got to know the devil in order to like know who your enemies
walk
are.
a mile in somebody's shoes.
Right.
To know where they're coming from. That being said, experiences are subjective. Right, and there are experiences.
No, they're objective.
Okay, whatever.
I object.
Yes, I object to that. Object. Anyway, there has to come a point in time where you look at yourself and you go, listen, my experiences say so and so, but does reality dictate something contrary to what my experiences say?
Right, you're not analyzing the evidence presented. You're analyzing what's been presented to you in a subjective way.
Yeah, which is why I have a problem when someone starts going off on something like institutional racism. Institutional racism hasn't existed since the 60s.
Right.
Right? So, but that being said, there are racist people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because institutional racism doesn't exist, doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There's one subset, right?
Yes, exactly. But so when I look at, let's say, for lack of a better description, African Americans who will rally against institutional racism, they're fighting a phantom. And they're only spinning their wheels in mud.
Feminism, trying to get equality for women.
Yeah, but that's not racially based.
No, I know that, but I'm just giving you a
But you got to think like
an example.
Institutional racism. Sometimes your reality. Sometimes
I like the huff because you know something different is coming. Like, God damn, where do I start?
Sometimes your reality is the only reality you know. So it's not to say that there's no such thing as institutional racism, but it's in pockets. It's in specific demographics. It may not be a blanket across the board, but it does exist. And
that's why I said racism exists. I just don't think it's institutionalized. Right? Because institutionalized implies that there are laws, there are institutions, etc., that are saying, well, because you're of a certain race, you're not allowed to drink at this fountain.
Right. And
you can't have this job. Now, that being said, there are people in positions who are racist.
And they're implementing, yes, I do. And there are people in positions that are racist that are implementing institutional racism. There's a lot of different levels to it. But at the end of the day, being a black person in Canada, I have yet to experience or see it firsthand.
Yeah.
but I do know it exists because I look into it, and I do have family in the States. I have that. It's just a lot of different levels to that shit. The States is, I mean, at the end of the day, race in the States, I believe everything is just gearing up because they want it to be. They want a race war in the States. I think they want a race war.
There is definitely that divide, especially in the U.S., where
so much.
Yeah, and I blame the politicians in general for that type of thing, and the media definitely has a hand in that as well.
Oh, 150%. And that's to go back onto the thing that we played in the beginning, where I agree. I agree with
Lev. Plug in a mic for yourself, man. There's a cord on the bottom there, and there's a mic in there. Just plug it in and get it ready for yourself.
I agreed with what was the thing that played in the beginning where I
Oh, you can't do levels.
You can't do levels. Don't worry about it. Where it said a lot of the Black and Mexican communities fell under detriment with the Democrats.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah.
A lot of the black, but at the end of the day, the whole thing is like, okay, well, that's very true. But you flip the other side of the hand, and under Republican, it's the same thing. The government needs a shift. Both Democratic and Republican need a shift.
I don't think that's an arguable point. That's definitely what needs to happen.
That's what I wanted to comment on that, but I forgot about it. When you said,
two sides of the same coin, pretty much.
Exactly.
Right?
It's all politics. If I don't trust politicians that just like it's like wrestling. You know what I'm saying? The wrestlers be in the ring cussing each other out, fighting.
It's not
and then
real.
you see Instagram pictures of them having a beer and going like this. If I see George Bush and Barack Obama going like this, thumbs up.
Yeah.
That's real smug, dog. That's you really threw us for a loop. We've been bamboozled and hoodwinked. We don't have.
Well, I think what it is that. Jay, you want to finish that sentence?
Yeah, I was just gonna say with race relations, we don't have any people in political power. We don't have a lot of people in political power. I mean, we do have senators, the U.S. does have senators and different lobbyists and things like that help as far as race relations and different things and stuff like that. They try and fight the good fight, but against, of course, they're the David and the Goliath, and no one's selling slingshots anymore. But you have.
They are selling SLRs though.
We don't have Martin Luther Kings anymore. We don't have Malcolm X's anymore. We have Jesse Jackson. We have Al Sharpton. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have Farrakhan. We have Farrakhan. We don't have people, especially the U.S. needs a Martin Luther King.
Absolutely.
And they need a Martin Luther King. Not as a martyr, but they need someone to say, listen, I'm all for us, but we can't have us unless we have us.
Right.
And I want to lead these marches. We need someone that's willing to stand up. We don't need rappers talking about their president is black. We don't need Al Sharpton just jumping on whatever's going to get his perm in the news. Like we need a Martin Luther King.
And on that exact same side, we need a white version of Martin Luther King. We need a yellow version of Martin Luther King.
No, I don't think we need.
I actually don't agree with that.
Here's why. And let me tell you why. Because if we have somebody just fighting for the black side, saying we all need to be inclusive with other races as well, there needs to be another leader for the other side. We don't be able to come together.
Here's the thing. The biggest problem, and I think this is probably going to boil down to black versus white in pretty much the U.S. Not even Canada.
Let's keep it on black versus white then.
And this is the reason for that is the powder keg issue, right? The reason I agree with Will that we don't need white and we don't need Asian is because neither of those groups of people are downtrodden, so to speak, right? Now, by downtrodden, historically, Africans or people of African descent in the U.S. have had, let's say, the shorter end of the stick.
In what way?
Right? Well, for hundreds of years of slavery, so to speak, to begin with, right? So the foundation is shaky, right? Okay. Whereas Asians were not typically downtrodden.
Okay.
With the exception of the Chinese who were internment camps to build railroads.
And the Japanese that were internment camps for the war. But
right, they did not come from a society that already had a solid foundation.
Okay.
Right? Now, where I think the black community is failing is when you do see leaders like that come up, they start calling them things like Uncle Toms and try to shame them into not being so white. Right? So I can think of two examples right off the top. Ben Carson right? Very, very successful black man, pulled himself out of the hood, became one of the leading neurosurgeons in the world.
Superior Court. No,
right?
Is he a judge now?
No, he's not a judge. He's a neurosurgeon, right? And people listen to him speak because he speaks in a very calculated and deliberate tone, and they go, well, you just shilling for white people. Right? Or you look at Larry Elder, right? Larry Elder is another very prominent guy in the U.S. He's a radio personality. I think he's a lawyer as well. And same thing, right? He will talk a bunch of absolute logic, right? And he takes the African American community to task over the nonsense that they do. And what is their response? Oh, you just being an Uncle Tom. You just chilling for the white man.
And you know what that is? Because when they say this in public around other black people who think that this is something that they're supposed to be so they don't get called that. You know what that is, right? Institutional racism.
I think that's mental racism.
But your mind is an institution. And everything you inject into your mind and put out into the public is an institution. It creates a culture. That's institutional racism in my eyes.
So then what you're trying to get at is the institutional racism is actually instituted by black people?
Both. It's both. Think about this.
Yeah.
The reason why we need MLK, the reason why we need someone to tell black people is because regardless of anything that the Asian community has gone through, the Asian community has kept money in the Asian community and has supported the Asian community themselves. The Jewish community has gone through horrendous things. They keep money in the Jewish community. The Jewish community thrives off of the Jewish community itself, even putting money outside and bringing money into the Jewish community. The white community, enough said. The black community is the only community that will set up infrastructure for themselves so they can spend it out elsewhere. Yeah. Why do you think we have all the rappers where we don't have local or like they say so? The Jewish community does not have to go out and say support Jewish business.
Yeah,
they just do.
Yes.
The black community is the only community that said, guys, support black business. Well, I could just go here, No one's saying you're wrong for going to Walmart, but you're going against the grain. We have the images of the people that influence our children, influence our impressionable minds, are wearing Gucci and Prada and drinking liquor and They're not going to anywhere else you go. You need to support your own community, not taking it out of the hands of the other community and saying supporting one community is not saying sans support to another community. But at the end of the day, you need to build yourself up. That's why we need an MLK. We need someone to say, okay, first of all, y'all shooting and killing each other. Okay, that's not going to go away. Y'all are mad about jobs in the community. Put jobs in your community.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Stop. If these drug dealers went and got all this stuff, and don't give out turkeys. Open up a butcher shop.
Yeah.
Open up an electronics store. Don't just give out turkeys.
Yeah.
Because then they're going to be emulating the drug dealer.
Fish, right?
Yeah, they're going to be emulating the drug dealers giving out the turkeys when you actually have a corner store, and some of them still do. There is still I'm just big brush, small fence.
Yeah.
But the reason why I say it's institutional racism because we're looking at the wrong people to build the institution for black people, and this is from generations of when there was institutional racism that was implemented by the white people. Yeah. And regardless of anything that got taken back, it's already it's passed down, ingrained.
Can I clarify something then? Just from what you've said, and just for my benefit and the listeners' benefit, the institutional racism you're talking about isn't necessarily from an institute,
right?
Right. It's not the government. It is what you're actually talking about is something bigger and more nebulous than institutional racism.
Right.
And I agree with you that it exists. I just wouldn't call it institutional.
I just don't have. I don't have a word for it.
Right. I would call it mental.
Mental racism,
right?
But which is mental, and now you're building, but you're building your own institutes because then it's like you're being an Uncle Tom. Well, black people are supposed to talk like this, or else you're an Uncle Tom.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't be pro-black and have a white girlfriend. What?
Perfect example.
Yeah, a white
perfect example.
And then and now you're setting up I know it's mental, but it's like the mental institution because you're setting that culture, and the culture I guess it's in the whole broad definition of what an institution is or can be, not like as a physical building and right?
It's a perfect example because when we do I Want to Smoke podcast, there's been times where people be like, why are you letting that white guy say nigger all the time? That's all right. I'm saying it the way I'm saying it.
Doesn't matter. I'm saying it the way I said it. You said it the way you said it? 44 minutes.
It's like, instead of knowing, like I had to be like, sorry, I speak properly. Like, what do you want me to say? Right? You can call me whatever you want, but if I speak with a for lack of a better term, white accent, or I speak proper English, I feel, for me personally, I feel that'll get me farther in life than if I speak with slang and all that shit talking in with business. If I go in there with slang, I'm gonna get laughed at.
Do you know how many times I've been told in a professional setting that I speak very well for being black?
Right?
It's like, oh, but they don't come out and say for being black, because it's like, oh, well, you speak very well.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
At our age, in the environment that we're in, did you expect something different? And then you don't ask that, because they did expect something different as soon as you walk. So now you got to think, okay, where do I stand? How rickety is this ledge I'm standing on right now?
Yeah, and on the flip side, I remember the first job I had. There was, and I try my best to speak extremely proper English when I'm talking to Canadians. Okay? So I worked with a couple of girls, and they always had a hard time understanding me. These were Canadian Caucasian women. So I remember one afternoon, a gentleman came in, white guy, with his 2 kids, and it was an arcade I worked in. So he went up to the front counter, he asked the girl working there at the time, and I'm standing behind her, so I'm hearing the conversation. This white guy comes up and asks for change for a $5 bill or whatever to play some video games. And this fella had the rankest, most backwards Trinidadian accent I had heard in a very long time. And she understood him word for word clearly. And then, after he left, I turned around and I looked at her, I'm like, Kelly, you understood that guy? She goes, yeah. I'm like, do you know where he was from? And she goes, I don't know, Scotland? It was so bizarre.
So I think it's ingrained in the visual. Obviously, that's a huge thing, right? If you see a color of a skin and you see an accent come out, you automatically want to assume, oh, I'm not going to understand this, right? Maybe that's ingrained in her brain. Where she saw the white skin,
that roadblock.
Yeah, she sees the white skin. She's gonna be like, okay, whatever. She just hears the words.
Yeah,
right. There's this.
So with me, she was hearing my skin color, and with him, she was just hearing his language.
Right, right. And it's crazy. I want to go back to what Will was saying here about the black mindset, because I think that's something that we need to address. We touched on it a couple podcasts before, but I think it's something we really need to hit on, because, and I say it all the time, it's, people look at me, or, they look at me and they think I should be a certain way because I dress a certain way, because I speak a certain way, because whatever, right? They automatically have these stereotypes in their mind about who I'm supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Whereas I look at Will, or if they look at Will compared to me, they may think because we dress similar, we speak similar, we should have the same views. Whereas you guys have known on the podcast, we barely ever agree, right?
Ever violently disagree,
right? Whereas we're
vehemently,
and that's the thing, is that to have this mindset of,
much to my chagrin,
to have this mindset, fuck you.
If we ever start a boy band, can we call it the Chagrins?
The Chagrins, the Chagrin 420s,
right?
Like, you look at Will and I, we should, if to be stereotypical, you and I should smoke weed. We should talk with major ebonics. We should both be rappers.
I don't know, Parnell, with you, I would
just
say you should be eating curry.
Us. Isn't that what we
right?
do?
You should be wearing a sari.
Well, I guess.
and saving pucks for the Mighty Ducks.
Fuck you. I think they used to call me Goldberg too.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is, like, it's like,
with the traps.
With the, goddamn, it's we have this mindset, and you want to be part of a culture, you want to be part of a group. So you go, okay, I have to think like this, and I have to be like this because I want to be included within this group. Whereas I'm old enough now to not give a fuck what a group is thinking if they're thinking incorrectly, or if they come to the wrong conclusions of something that I deem is wrong or incorrect. And I think we need to get to the side where people are thinking more for themselves, not being selfish, but thinking for themselves, thinking individually, and making determinations based on what they've reviewed.
Absolutely.
Right? Not based on what somebody has told them and what this group is telling them to think, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the major, I guess, roadblocks in society today, and why cultures aren't getting along, because you have a group of people that is very prominent in the black community and a group of people that is very prominent in the white community, and they're all saying that we need to stick with each other.
Yeah, and there's...
Don't get me wrong. We need to stick within our own... We need to build each cultures up individually. But we also need to include other cultures to get multiculturalism and have this whole melting pot that Canada is and the United States is and that the Caribbean is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not,
I think there is a difference though. Whereas in the Caribbean, the melting pot came about
through very different means.
Through very different means, absolutely through very different means, right? It came about because of geographical isolation, so to speak.
Okay.
Right? It was never something that was forced upon the population.
Right.
Right? With of course the caveat that the British brought everyone there against their will, pretty much.
Right.
Right? Or the Spanish brought the Africans there against their will. But in modern times, the cultural melting pot you see in the Caribbean, especially Guyana, Trinidad, was not by force. Right? It was never that. It was never, well, your neighbor is East Indian and you are Caucasian. You need to get along with them now, and as mandated by the government, right? Whereas what we're seeing currently is more of an experiment by the government, bringing people in from places that really and truly there are cultures that will never get along.
Right.
Right. When you look at, and I will use Islam and Judaism as an example. Right. There are Muslims that call for the elimination of Israel. Right? Do you think they will ever get along with somebody who's Jewish?
No, I don't. Not if they
Right?
adhere to those guidelines.
Exactly. You look at Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis. They were hell bent on destroying each other. They will never get along.
Right.
Right. So the problem is you're bringing in people now. So you have Jews that live in North America, and you're bringing in Muslims who want to kill them. Right. And then on top of that, not to equate a sexual orientation with race, but you have people of a certain sexual orientation that neither of those two religions say is correct. And let's throw Christianity into that as well. So none of this will get along.
Right, so it's ideologies that we're working with.
These are ideologies, right? So, no. These ideologies tend to be almost race determinant, right? Whereas
yeah.
I disagree with determining an ideology on race, right? That's what we've seen occur.
Yeah, and it's to the point now where you're having dueling ideologies that are facing off, and it's like you can almost tell which group is which and how they think by how they're acting without saying a word.
Right? Now, to bring that back to race, right? Within, and like I said, this is probably going to come down to black versus white in North America and in the US in specific, right? Within the white mentality in the US, by and large, this is again what Will says, painting it with a big brush, generalizing, right? Because everyone's going to find specifics where, no, that's not the case, John, you're wrong. Well, don't give me that.
That's a great white accent.
Right? So, by and large, the black community in the US seems to be, and I think this is very detrimental to the black community, by and large, seems to be holding on to something that happened 200 years ago. Right? I don't know one person who knows a slave. Right? Do you know anyone who knows a slave? Do you know any slaves?
No, I like that. I like that determination because that's how I've always kind of felt, and it's hard to say in today's society. It was hard to say 10 years ago too.
Yeah.
I was still saying it then.
Right? So, hold on. The reason I bring that up is because so many in the black community in the US use that as a crutch to justify their behavior. Right? Which is, it's stupid. Like, if you want to live in the past, live in the past. You'll go nowhere if you live in the past. You will never move forward. Right? And then there's this whole mentality, and I think the media as a whole definitely plays into this, because what they're doing is they're putting on TV and on the radio and on the internet the worst examples of African American behavior.
Right.
Right? And then saying, this is what you need to aspire to. You need to go and drink lean. You need to go and, rob people.
Right.
And there's nothing valid about you unless you've done 2 years in the pen.
Right. And you have kids looking up to these kids.
And then you have kids looking up to that saying, well, yeah, being a gangster and being whatever is cool. The Latino community in the US is the same thing too, right? Maybe not as extreme, but you still have kids looking up to MS-13 and going, yeah, that's cool. That's what I want to aspire to.
Right. You have Italians looking up to the mob saying that's what I want to aspire to. They had no choice in that situation either, right? So
there's always a choice.
Right, there's always a choice. Yeah.
Right, and I hate to hear that there's no choice. It's just the choice is difficult. It's a very difficult choice.
It really is. Will?
As far as so does anybody know a slave? No, I don't think anybody knows a slave, but we do know a generation removed descendant of a slave. So I'm talking like someone that could say that their grandfather or great grandfather was a slave, but the further on we go, we don't know that.
Yeah.
Not to say that we need to keep on saying that struggle is why we're struggling today, but at the end of the day, it's something that we should never forget and use that to build us to be better in the future.
Absolutely.
Not to keep swinging from it as a
Absolutely.
crutch.
You should absolutely.
It shouldn't be a
you
crutch.
should absolutely
It should be
acknowledge it. Acknowledge, say this happened. Okay, it happened. How do we get past it?
Yeah, not get past it. You never get past it.
You have to acknowledge
it
and say how do we get past? By past, I don't mean how do we forget it.
Yeah.
I mean how do we acknowledge it happened and then move forward from there?
The best way to acknowledge that it is to acknowledge that it happened. Maybe even have a day, right? Like have an international slave, like a day for, just call it something. I don't want to call it International Slave Day. But yeah, call it something.
It's
and have
International Massa Day?
Yeah, and have a day. But instead of just having Black History Month, have a day that they have it in other countries where, Germany recognizes the Holocaust and has a big thing for them.
And they have plaques everywhere in front of all these little things that
so maybe they have it where we
should do it more
recognize
like the Caribbean, right? Where the whole celebration of the slavery ending resulted in carnival.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than make it be somber, make it be a celebration.
Yeah,
like,
this is a celebration of it. It's across. Have it across the states. Have it
Right.
something that on a long weekend.
Is
so everybody
it the
party
same in
and
New
stuff.
Orleans? I'm not sure.
I'm not
with
100%.
Mardi Gras
I'm
and
not.
stuff like
I
that,
don't
'cause
know.
I think it was the same kind of thing where
I think
slaves
Mardi
were
Gras was
freed.
something along the lines of that. It could have been the free slave, or it could have been them pushing out the Spaniards or something. I don't know, something along those lines, right? But at the end of the day, then cool, and then teach it. I think the best way to the best form of acceptance and moving forward is education.
Absolutely.
I think they need
100%.
to teach slavery, and I don't think they did. I don't think they should just say, "Oh, we had slaves and this is what happened." They need to show that they actually sold children, they actually raped. Have it in the books.
Yeah.
As a curriculum, not as we're in February now. Let's talk about this and forget about it for the next 11 months.
But
Have it as a
by
curriculum.
the same token, it also needs to be, if you're educating people, you also need to make very clear the fact that it was Africans selling Africans into slavery. Mm-hmm. Right? And don't sugarcoat that either. Like, both sides of the story need to be shown. Right? And that's by no means saying that slavery was a good thing. I abhor slavery.
And
it was horrible.
And another way to move past it, if someone that's Black says something about slavery, says something like, "Oh, well, da 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 da," don't come with indentured servants. I want to slap the shit out of anybody who says, "Oh yeah, well, Italians were indentured servants." Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. That's not fucking slavery. That's working for very low wages and living in poverty. Huge fucking difference.
And also, don't come with, "Well, that was 200 years ago. Get over it."
Don't come with 200 years ago, because if you say that to someone, a Holocaust survivor, you're done. It's a hate crime to say get over the Holocaust. It's a hate crime to say that.
Yeah, the only difference is the only difference is the Jewish community is not using that.
No.
Right? Like, they don't go
And you know why they're not using that? Because the Jewish community is supporting and uplifting and building the Jewish community, the Black community.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck what anybody else says.
You go to the Jewish.
They have a mantra that says "never again." That will never happen again. They will. It's built into them. It's ingrained to them in a younger age. Never again.
You go to the Jewish community, and there's a lot of different things behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of the communities that are these ethnic communities are communities that were moved into, established, and built gangs in New York style from those ethnic communities, and the Black communities are, hey, we're leaving. You know what I'm saying? Like, black communities tried, and white people said, well, we're not going to stay in Compton anymore.
Yeah.
But cool, that could have been a benefit.
Yeah.
As soon as there was this, as soon as those workers and after the war and everybody started getting all that money, and Black people started getting a little bit of money and started buying property in Compton, which is a suburb.
Yeah.
And white people said, we don't want to be middle class with the people moved out. Black people said, cool, well, we're going to buy this store from you. We're going to buy this, we'll buy this land, No. So you could walk through the Jewish community, get yourself a schmeckle of this, that, and the third. You could walk through the Asian community, get yourself a knockoff bag and some food. You could walk through all these communities, but then you walk through the Black community and you need fucking warnings.
Yes.
You can't walk down this street. You can't wear this color. You can't do this or do that. You can't walk through like so. And then gentrification happens, and gentrification isn't a community effort to help. So you're not putting in a Starbucks, but going to other store owners and saying, we're putting in the Starbucks here. Do you know anybody in the community that could be manage or or even own this franchise? Let's help you out. The city's coming in and giving it to No, they're coming in, taking out, buying out all these people and then displacing people and having it like this. So there's a whole bunch of things, but that's the most fucked up thing is you can walk through any neighborhood for any ethnic community and be from a different ethnicity and enjoy their culture.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, you can
and
go
then
to Chinatown
once you go to Compton, once you go to some parts of Brooklyn and and I know there's a history of why it's like that. Yeah. But why the fuck is it like that?
Yeah, right. And this is the thing too, right? You said culture, right? You can experience another ethnicity's culture. I have a hard time defining African American culture as black culture.
Right.
Right? Simply because of the fact that I am from a different quote unquote black culture. Right? And what I find very interesting and what I'm seeing more and more here is blacks born in North America, maybe in the US in particular, but in North America in general, don't seem to be generally doing very well. Right? But the interesting thing is blacks coming from the Caribbean or coming from Africa are doing very well. Right? I can't tell you the amount of engineers that I know who are from Nigeria.
Work ethic.
Right? Yeah, it's a completely different mindset.
But sometimes like the mindset is different. I wouldn't say that it's work ethic because there's a lot of black Americans that do have, if not more work ethic, and are trying. But there's their own communities that are pulling them. Their own community that's pulling them down.
It's like crab in a bucket, right?
Yeah. So what I find very interesting as well, you look at, for example, the Black Hebrew Israelites, right? Or the Nation of Islam in the US, who are very quote-unquote pro-black, pro-African, pro-whatever, right? And they give their children ridiculous names because they think that's black. And they walk around in dashikis because they think that's black, right? And then someone coming from Nigeria or from Zimbabwe going, what the hell are you doing?
But
this is not black.
This is not black, but it is. It is.
It's
that's black culture.
It's basically infighting between with one culture.
But that's the whole thing. So if Nigerians are coming over and saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" they need to sit the fuck down. Because at the end of the day, black culture is different no matter where you go. You're gonna have different versions of black culture. Right, yeah. So they're walking around in dashikis and stuff like that. They may be taking some forms of traditional African garb and then doing and spicing it up for them. Yeah. But that's black. So taking black culture, black culture is not something that is synonymous with all black people, and black culture is the one culture that's so different and special.
I agree with you. I guess the point I'm trying to get at more is the mentality behind it, right? I don't see it necessarily as a sincere mentality when it's taken to the extremes of Black Hebrew Israelites or Nation of Islam. I don't see that as sincere. I see that as more militant. Right? And that is the problem I have, where you see people following that mentality, thinking that, well, this is the true representation of my Africanness, right? Whereas people I know from Africa couldn't give a flying damn about that, right? And they go, well, this was never what African was about. This is never what African people were about, right? You have this skewed mentality of what it actually represents, right? In Trinidad, most black people that I know, like I'm talking like people who are majority black blood, African blood, they don't care. Like, they really and truly don't care. There was a political party that started when I was a child in Trinidad called NJAC. And this was a black power movement. They had no support.
But you know why they had no support? Because they had no opposition.
Well, no, they had opposition. But the opposition was handled very differently.
Exactly.
Right? The opposition was pretty much like, and this is black Trinidadians or black Caribbean people going, are you crazy?
But if you but of course they're gonna, black Trinidadians and black Jamaicans and black Caribbean people are gonna be like, are you crazy? We already have black power.
Yes, exactly.
I just walked down the street, so it's like opening up a liquor store in a liquor store.
Yes.
Oh, I'm selling this liquor, dog. They already selling liquor. Fuck you mean?
With 5% higher prices.
Yeah. So, but you go to the States where at that time, when the Black Power movement, they needed that shit.
Yeah.
They needed people that looked like them and dressed like them, not on the militant side, but to open up the free breakfasts and lunch for these kids. They needed black people to walk around. Yeah. They needed black people to walk around, black people that knew the gun laws to walk around with guns.
Yes.
So the people so their opposition wasn't shooting them. We're talking about the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
There was most definitely institutional racism there.
Oh, yeah.
And they were most definitely shooting black people for the fun of it. Fun. They were killing black people. Police were killing black people for fun. Now, it may be a misunderstanding. Still fucked up. But we fucked up. Back then, it was for fun.
Yeah.
They had groups in police departments that would make bets on killing another human being, another living being, because of how they looked. So at that point, they needed that shit. They needed black people to tell black people, A, you're beautiful. B, you are a human being. And C, we can't let these motherfuckers gun you down no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then shit got out of hand.
Oh, yeah, it got very out of hand. Where now you're seeing like 300-pound Shaniqua down in the Bronx saying, I as a queen.
Right.
No, you're not. You're ugly and you're fat.
Right.
Let's just be real.
It's that overcorrection, right? We see an overcorrection in society where something very bad happened, and instead of going to the point of saying, okay, let's get to this point, we're going to go all the way over to the other side and say that'll never happen again, and I'm going to be completely the opposite way now, right? Where you're, instead of coming to being able to meet in the middle, you're saying, well, we don't want to meet in the middle now. We want to have full control of everything, or whatever the hell the term is for that, right?
That's the militant side of the thing. That's not,
and it's like, that doesn't serve a great purpose either. Yes, it's great to have your individuality and your freedom and whatever else, but if we can't meet in the middle and have an agreement, it's just going to go, if it keeps going the way it is, it's going to be exactly like it was in 1960, except reversed.
That's why we need a leader.
Yeah, and then what the other symptom we're seeing now is something that I'm sure both you and Will have gone through. Right, where it's, well, you're dating a white girl, so you're a traitor now.
Yeah, a race traitor.
Right?
I couldn't. Oh my goodness, I can't put. I used to not be able to put up anything that was like pro-black or fighting for that because all but one of my kids are interracial. I have a preference where I love white women. It's like, okay, so I prefer white women. That doesn't mean I don't like black women. I was raised by fucking black women. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where black people will bring you down. Black people will let black people will talk shit about their fucking kids.
If you don't agree with the overall black ideology, you will get dragged down by that culture.
Ask a black parent about their kids. First thing is, how's so and so? Oh, they bad as hell.
Yeah.
The fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Ask a black parent about their kids. I do it sometimes. My kids aren't fucking bad. Ask outside of comedy, because
this little motherfucker's in jail again.
Like if you like. Think about, and that's what I'm talking about, systemic. Because at the end of the day, when you look at these other communities, all these other communities were people bringing in their beliefs from where they came from.
Right.
We have no idea where we came from.
Yeah.
We know it's Africa. Okay. And are you going to do Ancestry.com? Well, now the government has your fucking shit. And dead ass, they arrested somebody because their half-brother, their half-brother did an Ancestry.com, and they got DNA on a serial rapist.
Wow.
Good. It's good that they caught this motherfucker, but what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
As soon as you submit that, you consent to giving... Anyways, that's a whole different fucking can of worms. But this is why it's systemic. Because you have the mentality from institutional racism handed down generation to generation to generation to where now you're just mentally enslaved. You look at the people we emulate. You go to the club and you look who the black people want to act like. Whereas even in the militant Black Panther days,
just that statement, we go to the club to look at the black people we want to emulate. Whereas
no, not even that. We go to the club and look at the black people and who they want to emulate.
Instead of saying, if you look at white people, they're not saying let's go to the club and look at who and you can see which one to emulate. I mean, the white people will be like, oh, look at that businessman. I want to emulate Warren Buffett.
No, but I'm not saying. I
get what you're saying now. I lost it.
No, but I agree with what you're saying too. But the whole thing is like you look at the 80s, right? Huge crack epidemic in the 80s,
Do we
right?
have to?
Huge crack epidemic in the 80s,
The
right?
80s was an awesome decade.
Now, the 70s, 60s and 70s, black man, even the black family, most was still there. You still had the black family. You could talk to your grandparents, and so your grandparents still together. Like that dynamic wasn't really destroyed until late 70s and into 80s and da 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 da. So now you have these kids in the 80s that don't know who to look up to because the men are either on crack. You don't want to look up to a crackhead.
Yeah. Or they're absent.
They're absent or they're in jail or whatever.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? Absent, all that shit. But now they're looking at the pimps, the drug dealers, and everybody like that because they have what they think it is to be a man. They have women, they have money, they can support people. When you come from a household where your mom is working 3 jobs and you love your mom. That's your mother. So now you're looking at someone that has money. It's like, well, you can support people.
Yeah.
Let me go talk to him. He takes you under your wing. You start getting a little bit of cash. You're doing this, that, and the third. You're giving your mom money. Now you feel like you're a man because you feel like you're doing what men are supposed to do to protect your mom. But you also have this dichotomy of your main male influence as a male is a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Now you're slapping bitches in the streets. Now you're pimping hoes. You're doing all this detrimental shit. You got all this gold and da 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 da. Now insert hip hop. Mm-hmm. Insert music where the youth could speak out against A, what I just spoke of.
Yeah.
And B, the government.
Yeah.
But then
it gets hijacked.
Yeah, it gets hijacked. The government says you can't talk about this. You can't say this. The Supreme Court says, oh yes, they can. We'll just put a sticker on it. So then the government says, all right then, let's talk to these record labels and say, hey, we can make a lot of money off of this shit. Now they're making money off of hip hop. Mm-hmm. And now, what do we see in hip hop? Because you look at NWA, you look at Public Enemy, you look at like you look at gangster rap in its core.
Yeah.
Before gangster rap got flashy, this shit wasn't about chains. This shit wasn't about living life. It was like, this is where the fuck I live, and this is what the fuck is happening.
Yeah.
I need to kill a nigga before a nigga kill me.
Yeah.
111. Now it's...
I like it. He calls himself out on it.
Now it's, I need to kill a nigga for his chain.
Right. Because people are going to buy that music.
Yeah, and people are going to buy this music. So now look at what the kids are looking at. Mm-hmm. And you look at all this stuff. Nothing anywhere you see is a support of your people.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like systemic racism, institutionalized racism, or maybe not institutionalized anymore, but it's all, we were taught and programmed to suppress ourselves.
Yeah, which is
as soon as oppression said we can't do it.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I listen to a lot less hip hop these days and a lot more reggae, right? By ratio. Back in the day, it was probably about, I would say I listened to like 70% reggae, 30% hip hop. Now it's nearly 90% reggae and 10% hip hop. And that's why I always refer back to Bob Marley. Mm-hmm. Right, Bob Marley, who himself was biracial
and murdered,
and
we put that out. Bob Marley was murdered.
Yeah, possibly. There's a
he was murdered. They killed Bob Marley. Man, the shit he was saying.
Well, yeah. So, and I know that they definitely
he got really serious here for a second,
right? But here's the thing: Bob Marley has a very good line in the song "Redemption Song," right? Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. Mm-hmm. None but ourselves can free our minds. Right, because he recognized what was going on not only in Jamaica but in the Caribbean, right? And that whole mindset for reggae music, and don't get me wrong, there are elements in reggae like dancehall reggae that tend to be a little more slack and a lot more violent, right? But by and large, reggae music has maintained itself as an uplifting cultural movement, right? Which is why I'd rather listen to reggae than listen to hip hop, because hip hop went the route of let's get really stupid. And not only tell people to sell drugs, but now let's just use drugs.
Yeah, now it's not even like, it's like, okay. And it's going to, and going back to our subject, it's extremely hard. You know when me and you argue, and we may be arguing the same point, but we're so vehement on how we see our point that we just want to battle it into each other's heads. And he has to come in and tell each of us individually, this is what you mean, this is what he means. Imagine we didn't have him and we just kept going and going and going and going. It's going to be hard for us to have any type of relation because we can't even understand ourselves in that point to know that we're seeing the same angle.
Right.
And so it's hard to, if we're keeping it on the black and white thing, it's hard to have those positive race relations on either side because let's say on the white side with the white politicians, this, that, and the third, let's say Trump isn't a racist. Okay, he's not a racist, but he definitely does not know how to handle different races.
Absolutely not.
He doesn't know how to handle them. B, let's say, on the black side, we are so confused with who the fuck we are. We don't even know what we want, except we want some things to stop, and we don't know how to bring it.
Yeah. Right. And not only that, you look at, we'll take it back to your analogy, how you and I are always, if we arguing the same point, but we don't see the other person's point, we don't see the other person trying to get to the same point we are because we're so in our own mindset. You can take that as a black person and a white person arguing the same point. But there's nobody like John to step in and say, hey guys, listen, you're arguing the same point. You're saying the exact same thing. Let's get together here.
And let's add in the fact that sometimes, like, if it's black people and white people really need to tread carefully because there's a history in these arguments now. You dig what I'm saying? So if me and you, let's say me and you are arguing over something about parents, and I'm like, I say something about your mom, and I forget the history that if your mom passed away or something like that violently. There's a history where I can't touch on that. I'm not trying to touch on that.
But the other person will feel a way about it.
Feel about way, and it's not just. And now let's add millions of people. Violent people.
Right.
People that are growing up in war zones. Like, if you grew up, some of these neighborhoods is like Fallujah.
I'm sorry, what now?
Fallujah.
One more time.
Fallujah. You're growing up in a war zone, and then you take. Then we talk about. Now, John had another point. God damn, I got a lot of shit to say about this shit. John had another point about Caribbean people coming into the U.S. and they're not part of that crab bucket thing like that, and they're trying to establish, and they may have a shop in Brooklyn and you know that Caribbean bodega owner in Brooklyn, or the one that owns the little produce shop or whatever like that. But they had kids. And they had kids that had to be raised in the system, a.k.a. the United States. And now their kids are messing up. And their parents are like, I don't know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's this one rapper, I can't remember his name. His parents are from the Caribbean. I can't remember. No, Africa. Somewhere in Africa. Maybe Lagos? I don't know. But he was talking about how when he went back to Africa and came back, all he could do is apologize to his parents.
Yeah.
Because he's in gang banging and drug dealing, went to jail a few times.
And he didn't appreciate where they came from, the struggle they had to go through to get there.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
Because they're not, I mean, I don't know what it is about Africans and Caribbeans, but y'all are proud as fuck.
Yeah.
Niggas don't go to doctors. Niggas be like, I'll walk it off. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's just black people or colored people in general. Whereas, like, I had to talk to my mom, be like, yo, like, you did it. Like, da-da-da-da. How the fuck did you do this shit? Yeah. I didn't know she was struggling. I didn't know she was hurting. I've said some shit to my moms as a kid that I can't hear from a 5-year-old without bawling my eyes out. And the 5-year-old don't fucking mean it. Right. Like, yo, I'm so sorry for saying these things to you. And she's like, yeah, it hurt, but, you know, da-da-da. I'm like, what the fuck? Am I weak? But that's what I'm saying. So there's so many things in our generation, and I hate to say it, even in our kids' generation, we will not see harmony among the black and white race just because you had to go to jail in order to kick the habit. We have to hit rock bottom desperation.
Sometimes,
are we not there
anarchy.
yet? Yes. Are we not there yet?
No, we're not. We're not grabbing arms. I really feel there will be a war between the races, and I'm talking like purge style shit.
Wow.
I think that's what's going to happen before someone sits down and says, "Yo, we're getting to the point we're not seeing each other as people anymore. We're seeing each other as agendas. We're seeing each other as ideologies. We're seeing each other as cultures. Like, culture and everything apart. You need to look at a human like they're a human. You need to look at a human like it's yourself. Imagine dying, getting a whole bunch of memories back, and saying you're not ready to stay here yet. Now you have to go be this person, and you realize every person on earth is your soul, and you just keep going back and forth.
Right. This draws back to last week's episode where I specifically talked about we have to know somebody for who they are and get to know somebody for who they are and who they are as a person, not just see them as that addict or that black person or that white person. You have to be able to individualize people and not just clump them into this big group and say, I don't fucking like them or we'll never get along.
Yeah, and you know, that's always been my default setting, right? Just know someone for who they are, right? That being said, I do, and I will admit to this, I do stereotype communities, right? I don't stereotype individuals, but I do stereotype communities.
But you don't stereotype communities based off the community. You stereotype community based off experience.
Yeah, and what I've seen, right? So, Yeah, it's very strange, and I think again, the average human setting, regardless of whether people want to admit it or not, is stereotyping.
Yeah, and I think that's the default setting.
Yeah,
right.
That's where you're going to go. Survival setting.
That's where you're going to go to, right? If I'm in trouble, I'm going to go where I feel most comfortable and who I feel most comfortable with, right? And I think that's what everybody else would do too, right? Whether that be, and for me, that is the Black community, the Caribbean community, because I know they'll understand what I'm saying. They'll understand my hardship. They'll understand.
Speaking on behalf of the Caribbean community, we do not understand you at all.
Perfect.
Much to your chagrin.
Yes.
Close this motherfucker out. Kobo, give me your closings on this, man.
You know what? I think race relations it's definitely a very hot topic. That being said, my view of race relations is definitely different than most people, given the fact that I am highly, highly multiracial in my background. And I come from a highly, highly multiracial country that, if for no other success that they've had, at least Trinidad has successfully become the melting pot that the whole world seems to want to become. At the end of the day, I don't think race relations, any strained race relation, will ever improve until members of both sides are willing to look at themselves not only objectively, but absolutely 100% honestly, right? And be able to set aside pride and prejudice to actually criticize themselves, right? What have we done incorrectly? And be honest about it, right?
That's exactly what Martin Luther King did.
Yeah.
And after Malcolm X left the nation, that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
He criticized the nation. That's what got him killed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm done.
Oh. My turn?
Sure.
Ficky. I agree. I just feel like, we need to look at what we're doing. Every race needs to look at what they're doing in the race relations and just in general and be like, yo, we're fucking up. Then come to the table. Bring something to the table and say, hey, let's stop fucking each other up. It's not going to happen until it's something. This feels like it's been going on for so long, and now it's like it was going on for so long, and it's the reverse bell curve. Like it was up here, and then it started going down, and and then for whatever reason, started shooting back up. Mm-hmm. People are people who, even if Trump isn't a racist, the majority of the people think he's a racist. And the thing that's fucked up about it is racist people think he's a racist. And they think, okay, well, if Trump's a racist, I'm a racist. I can be public and open and fucked up about it too. Whereas if Trump isn't a racist, I think degrees of separation and beyond his control, he's allowed racists to come out and show their faces on both sides of the fence.
That kind of rhymed. Anyway.
So, race relations is shit is going to hit the proverbial fan. And hopefully we got our umbrellas.
You good?
Yeah.
I don't have much to say on this.
It's about time. No, I'm sorry. Go.
I don't have much to say on this topic except thank you, gentlemen, for an open conversation. This was you guys opened my eyes to a few things about myself. I tend to look inward before I look outward for a solution, and to do that, you have to realize who you are first, and realize who we are as a people, and realize that if you don't accept what's wrong with you, you can't move past that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are taking what's wrong with them and deflecting onto somebody else, mm-hmm. causing a bunch of stress and turmoil that is definitely not needed. Again, back to the last week's episode. Let's look at people as individuals and figure out who they are as people before we start classifying them as certain races or cultures and having hate towards them simply because of what they look like. I think that's it. Guys, thank you for a fantastic conversation.
No, man, I feel like the podcast ain't shit if I'm not yelling at you.
Do you want to yell a little bit? What do you want to get into? Well, fuck your mother?
Yeah, I killed him, and I hope they burn in hell.
Goddamn right, I killed him.
And with that,
we out this motherfucker.
Today's episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Lex. For all your stay fresh needs, Lex has you covered. If you're looking for Bape, Supreme, the exclusive 2-6 Dover collection, and those hard-to-find Jordans or Yeezys, you need to check out Lex. That's Lex on 17th Avenue and Chinook Mall across from Urban Outfitters. Lex on 17th Avenue Southeast and Chinook Mall across from Urban Outfitters. Don't sleep.